first year I've had so many flute players in the high school band. And so we decided to make a flute ensemble. And so we have Brianna James, Lainey Talbert, Ashley Palmer, Lindsay Palmer, Dr. Laddie, Ashley. Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
So far? Amber Parsley, Stephanie Brady. And we were just talking one day and we were saying, man, we have so many flute players. We should do something. So I said, would you guys like to play Christmas carols? And I said, yeah. So here we are. We made ourselves a gig. So we hope you like it. Merry Christmas. We're going to play 2 more songs. We'll play Silent Night.
Just great.
Silent Night.
Very talented artist. You represent the best of what we do in Newmarket. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Could you guys grab your stands? We'll go right out this door so they can start the music and I'll get their stuff. How are you? Awake and well.
Thank you.
Oh, really? Hi, I'm
Actually,
get it before you leave.
Well, it's been so quick.
Thanks for your, Are we still?
We're on.
What? Should be because they were taking a.
Yeah.
I had a quick question before we start. I didn't notice that there was a room for a student report, which is fine because there's not much that's happened since the last meeting. But I had an idea that I thought might benefit the student body that I wanted to present to the school board. At what point should I present that, or just bring that up for discussion?
Well, I think we get committee reports.
Okay.
Go before I.
Okay. Sounds good.
There's always room for a student report.
There is.
Absolutely. So, Chad is not able to be with us this evening.
Yeah, snug one.
If you wish to.
Do you mind, Jill?
Okay, and already, I'm sure, have the attention of the room downstairs, so I'd call this meeting to order, December 18th, 2008. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, the music was captured down in the recording booth downstairs that we just had from the flute ensemble at the junior senior high school. That was wonderful.
Sure was.
Way to hear what they have to offer, as
Yes.
well as help get into a holiday spirit. So, special thanks to them and to Mr. Zaricki for coming forward and saying, "Hey, we'd like to do this." That was terrific.
Just an excellent performance.
To continue on, Sean, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I've been reminded by folks that the microphones are very important, so keeping them close makes it easier for the folks at home to hear us. I need that reminder for myself. So I'll continue with our mission statement. The Newmarket School District is committed to the highest standards of quality education by creating a safe and successful learning community that embraces diversity and responds to the social, emotional, intellectual, and physical needs of every child. We are dedicated to fostering links to the broader community to ensure that students develop lifelong skills, enabling them to be contributing and productive members of society. Thank you. Mr. Jablonski is unable to be with us this evening. I received a message earlier tonight that he had some family concerns to take care of. So welcome to, this is a good time for folks if they had comments to bring to the board. This would be the time to do so. At this point, we should just move straight into our meeting minutes, given that there are no public comments tonight. Is my understanding.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 4th meeting.
Thank you, Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just that I wasn't here, and neither, I think, were you two.
Okay. Hearing no comments, then all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And as noted, Jill was not in attendance, so she abstained from that vote. And before I forget, Erica, welcome. We're happy to have you here, recording our minutes going forward from now. So thanks for being willing to do that. We had no non-public session at the event, so there's no need for those minutes. So moving along, we've got representatives here from the schools to also to review the calendar that we're looking forward to for the upcoming academic year 2009, 2010. Thought it'd be good if we could put that at this point in the agenda so that those who wish to get home can do so.
As mentioned before, this calendar that you're reviewing, this draft calendar, does align with the Seacoast School of Technology. So we received yesterday the final version from Exeter, and we do have complete alignment.
Good.
I have a quick question.
Certainly.
Just wondering, I know on Labor Day weekend they have now a 4-day weekend because they have that Friday off. But then also on Thanksgiving we used to have that Thursday, Friday. I know when I was in school, but now they have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Is there a reason that we're adding those extra days into the holidays? I'm just curious.
There are no changes from last year.
You know, I know
This
not
current
from
year.
last year, just in
Right.
general, why they started adding those extra days. I was just
Yep.
curious.
Come up, please, Nancy.
I'm going to use the microphone like you asked. I'm Nancy Pagnotta, and I'm the president of the NTA. The Wednesday has been on the calendar for at least the last 3 years. Why it was added, I think, in light of the fact that people travel, and students as well. We don't have a large population on that day before the Thanksgiving, at least when we did have a Wednesday. And in the past, it's always been a half day before that, before the,
Right.
3 years ago.
Okay.
And that proves to be successful. Frankly, we have an obligation in terms of the total number of days of instruction, so students aren't shortchanged. If anything, we have a higher participation rate in terms of attendance by acknowledging that there is travel, there are those considerations. So in essence, you tack it on at the end.
I have a question, if I may. I
Sure.
know one of the things that we had requested was a half-day on December 23rd. Again, in light of people traveling, both students and staff, but I'm noting that it is a full day. We have in the past, if you look back at all years previous to this year, it's always been a half-day. Last year, it was a request to make it a half-day, and I don't know why that didn't happen, but it didn't. So this year, on the 23rd, which is next Tuesday, we have a full day.
Right. Did that change from the draft that we reviewed initially? I don't think so. did
No,
it?
we talked about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's my only question.
The 4 days at Labor Day has tended to become fairly common in this area because there are so many seasonal businesses that operate in the summertime. It used to be your school year didn't start until after Labor Day.
Right.
But as the requirement for a longer school year came along, the trade-off with allowing businesses to have their youth workers on that long weekend
Right.
and allowing families to culminate, their long weekend travel plans. This was sort of the trade-off, so that we get those several days of school in front to accommodate the longer calendar and still allow for the cultural needs of the community that between travel and seasonal businesses and things like that work, because summer typically is through the Labor Day holiday. So that's the reason for that 4-day, historically anyway.
And I guess the reason I'm asking these questions is just because I kind of am for the idea of starting after Labor Day instead of adding all these extra days in throughout the year. I'm not saying it's the right thing. It's just that I feel like we're cutting back into our summer. We're extending our summers longer. We're cutting into our summers at the end of summer, and we're adding more days during the year. Other people might agree that that works better for the whole community, and that's fine. I'm used to the way it was before, and I kind of liked having a summer. It seems like it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
It's true. It's certainly in some calendars, that's a factor worked into the calendar itself. But where we participate and a number of districts participate in this School of Technology. We have to be careful that we are in alignment.
The other danger is, again, when the school year was lengthened, once you add, if you don't start before Labor Day and get a couple of days in, even the 5 normal snow days then push you back so close to the end of June that you run the risk of being in school after July 1 in a really bad year.
Yeah.
I mean, Manchester wasn't out until the 27th or 25th of June this past year, but Manchester doesn't start until after Labor Day. So those 3 days can make a huge difference on the other end, especially with snow emergencies and unfortunately ice storms and those things that we can't. The Mother's Day floods, all of those kinds of things. We've been in better shape than some other districts because of this pre-Labor Day start.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And the other concern is just because in the summertime, there's no air conditioning, and it does get really hot in June, and it makes it harder for the students, obviously,
Yeah, sure.
when you're putting them in that situation. So that just
Mm-hmm.
concerns me.
Question about
Teachers.
the, Nancy's question about December 23rd. Is that is SST open on that day? Do you know? Does anyone know?
Do you have it with you?
Yeah, I don't have the SST calendar. We'd have to verify that. We'd have to verify
Yeah,
that.
I'd like to find out. I mean, if it is, I'm inclined to say we should,
Yeah.
but if it isn't, maybe we can
Well,
talk about making
Right.
that
It can be on the other end as well. But again, we keep pushing into the summer months.
Right.
As long as we have the total days, philosophically, certainly I'm not opposed to it. But we'll have to make sure, and I don't recall whether or not that's a day scheduled for SST. If it is, then we need to be open.
Makes it easier.
Yeah.
Then we need to be open.
So we can verify that?
We can verify that.
Okay.
And again, it's not like we're requesting the full day, it's a
Yeah.
half day.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
Just so that
even-
we're understanding one
even if
another.
SST is open a full day, that does not preclude us allowing our students to attend their 3rd block SST class or 2nd block SST class, even if we have officially closed the building at noon,
That's
for
correct.
example.
That's correct.
So it doesn't eliminate student participation in last block SST if in fact they're open.
That's
We can
correct.
still provide transportation and do that.
But I think then it's a matter of what we discussed as well as Thanksgiving. Do you do half-days? Do you not have the day? So the half-day is always an issue that begs another question in terms of encouraging attendance.
Do early release days often wind up with lower student numbers in the building?
We haven't found that,
No.
no. I will tell you, though, in light of next week, the 23rd, we are losing students next week. Some as early as as this weekend, leaving for vacation. But we're never gonna solve that. But not typically on a half-day workshop, we don't lose them. In fact, 2 have been moved to Monday and a Friday, as opposed to a Wednesday, in light of the fact that that would help the students have a real nice work week, as opposed to having the half-day in the middle of the week.
Yes.
And Mr. LaRoche was kind enough to change that up a bit and see how that goes. So,
Okay.
Okay, so we'll check and see what's going on at SST on the
Yes.
23rd, and
Yes.
then we'll revisit that.
okay, great.
Look good?
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thanks very much. Okay. Then, off we move into the rest of the program, which is the warrant articles, which we have printed in our packets.
Sue, you want to address that?
Sure. I don't believe you got, I did send these to DRA for review, and there are some changes that are suggested, so I will, they just came today. So I don't think Annette got to make these changes on your copy, but they're just some minor.
Okay. So these are recommendations for changes. Articles 1 and 6 have similar changes proposed.
Yes, they do not require a recommendation.
Okay.
I think, yeah, and historically, 6 has always had that on there, and it's always been a concern. Should we or should we not? Do you recall that conversation we've had in the past about
Yeah.
that?
And the purpose of the recommendation is that I guess for the lack of a better word, jurisdiction of the
Mhm.
Budget Committee is on financial related warrant articles explicitly. But that's what these guys are. Okay, recommendations are required on special warrant articles.
Required on
only.
special, yes, excuse me, yes.
Mhm.
Can you remind me again, did we say, for Articles 2 through 5, that instead of saying, you know, instead of talking about surplus, or, you know, end of the year surplus?
I think Forrest had suggested that if I could craft the language that would be there if we were not to put up to a certain amount, if we could put what it would look like to just put an amount.
But we would only put that amount if we had a
Oh.
surplus at the end of the year, correct?
Funds available.
That wording has been in the warrants previously.
Yeah, and it's not in there now.
I
So is
agree
that how you'd want to
lacks
have it?
clarity, because people could perceive that, the voter could perceive that we're looking to raise additional.
Exactly, that's what,
Set
that's
aside-
what this is.
Set aside surplus.
Right.
Catch on TV.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
In fact, you want the truth, I think you're right. We would, if these stood, I bet we'd actually be appropriating
We
these
would be.
dollars out of the next budget.
Yeah, we
Well,
would
then
be.
that's my mistake, because I thought that was what you wanted me to do, because you wanted to be clear that you were not using any of those
No,
funds
yeah,
from
the
the
only thing I
elevator.
meant was
Right.
to specify the dollar amounts. I didn't
Okay.
mean to change didn't suggest changing
Yeah.
the other warrant in any other way.
So you want that to be from a surplus?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Okay.
that can be added then.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, yeah, that's
Good catch, thanks, Linda.
an important clarification.
Is that $10,000 what you had decided on last time, or is there
We,
supposed to be?
actually, we didn't.
You didn't.
Yeah, we didn't
Oh,
make
okay.
a decision on
Yeah, so
dollar
just-
figures.
We said we're
Just
gonna
kinda
put
said-
a dollar
Dollar
amount
It's
there.
a
Mhm.
placeholder if,
The other thing that on Article 1, that I would like to talk about
Mhm.
is that 192,000, I would like to, I'd like to use some of the balance from our
That's-
fund,
from the maintenance.
From the
The maintenance,
trust
yeah.
fund, okay.
and reduce that so that, you know, maybe we keep 5,000 in the maintenance fund, and use the rest of it for the roof and whatever the balance is, to make that as a low a dollar figure as we can.
How much do we have in the maintenance?
I was just
Do you
going to check
remember?
that for you, actually. There isn't a lot, because you did approve
think
quite a
so.
bit of that this year. And it will be dependent on, we're just finishing up the audit, what goes in there.
Mhm.
And I may have left that on my desk, I apologize.
I don't think any of them had that much money
The special ed,
in them.
the special ed
Right,
fund,
just
we
the
haven't
special ed,
touched
which
that.
we should have.
Technology, oh, I just had that
Yeah.
with me.
I think technology only had like
I
10,000.
apologize, I just grabbed that when I left, and I must have left it on my desk. But it's probably around 20,000.
Yeah.
Because you did appropriate, I want to say, last year you took out around 70, and this year you're taking out 25 from the elementary, and, I can't remember off the top of my head, but a considerable amount out of this year's budget from that fund.
Okay.
So you don't have a whole lot. The tax rate, the tax impact on that is 3 cents per
Okay.
thousand.
Well, I mean,
I'd like to
And that
keep,
kind of, that kind of, sorry.
I'd like to keep a reasonable amount of money in that maintenance fund
Mhm.
for the boiler or, you know,
Yes.
those sort of things can be very urgent in the wintertime to take care of, and if those funds are lacking, we're in
Right.
trouble.
I can give you and I just got an update from the trustee for interest purposes. Not that that's really high right now, but I do have the actual balance, and I can get that to you at the next meeting, and you can come up with, if you decide to change that.
I agree with you, Cliff, especially since we just had that backup at the elementary school with the plumbing, something like that happening. I think we have to have some money in there to
Mhm.
be able to deal with
Yes.
that.
I mean, that's
Yes.
the purpose, really, that those funds were set up for, was to, at some level, to deal with the unexpected happening and being able to adequately plan.
Mhm.
Well, maybe when we see what the exact figure is, we can determine, how much of a cushion do we need to have and how much of it can go toward.
We need to do that tonight.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Yeah,
Well,
No, you don't have to. You don't have to approve these and finalize these. You can bring your draft to your meeting at
I assumed
public
we were
hearing.
gonna finalize the warrants tonight.
You can wait until January, your next meeting.
What's the date that?
Your
we
public
have?
hearing is the 13th, but again, your public hearing isn't the final say on what you present at your deliberative session. At that point, you could make changes again based on what the public may have to offer. So you're not necessarily finalizing everything until that point. So you have a meeting on the 8th, is that correct? Where you could in
We have
fact
a
finalize
Budget
it.
committee meeting on the 6th.
Right, with the budget committee
At
meeting.
which it was always my assumption that, they need to weigh in on all of these articles,
Mhm.
almost, according to what I'm just reading here.
Right.
But, so to not have, with the holidays upon us, we don't have another meeting this month. I don't think we have a meeting prior to that budget committee meeting.
That's right.
No.
So I think we need to get these hammered out tonight so that we can give them to the budget committee on the 6th and say, here's where we're currently standing.
It's not ill-advised.
What we're ready to do.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Pound it out.
They need to get to work.
Yeah.
all right, so then, the maintenance fund you think is probably gonna be around 20,000? That's
Just off the top of my head. I
Okay.
can run up and get that folder. It's on my desk.
Probably
Let me
worth
just
it.
get
It's
it.
worth doing.
Let me
Worthwhile.
get it. I think
Thanks.
I left it
Yep.
right.
Can I just ask a quick question while she's getting that? The budget committee is getting the information on the 6th, and when is our meeting? 13th?
Our school
The-
board,
Yeah, are we having a public meeting in January? Or do we have to post for the public meeting in January? Just remind me. Do we have a meeting in January or like a public hearing, right?
yes,
It's on the school board date, the 8th?
no,
we
that's
don't
a
have
regular school board.
We don't have a if you look here,
When is it?
February 3rd is our public hearing
okay.
on the budget.
All right.
So it's February 3rd, and then the March 10th
Okay.
is voting day.
Sorry.
But what
At least
about,
that says it sits
what's
here.
the
We haven't
deliberative
finalized
session,
that.
though?
Hmm?
Isn't there a deliberative session?
That, February
That's the
3rd, that's
hearing.
deliberative session.
Oh, why did I
Pub-
think there were two that we had? Okay. I'm sorry. I thought we had one and then we had a deliberative session. I didn't realize we just had one and then a vote. Not that I'm adding any in, I'm just.
The deliberative session is essentially an opportunity for the
Public.
public to speak, as well as provide amendments to the warrant,
Okay.
which essentially can only be in changing of dollar values.
What does this mean?
That's why I was getting confused with these.
I'm not sure. The calendar reads January 20, last date for hearing.
That's why I was
Is-
confused.
Yeah.
So,
Hopefully Sue will bring down her budget file that has all those dates, that
Yeah.
comprehensive listing of dates where they're all spelled out.
Maybe those are just reminders for her to meet the deadlines for the warrant articles or something, but I wasn't sure. That's why I was asking.
I don't have a copy of that
The
budget
budget
schedule.
committee-
Budget calendar.
The budget committee has to have a hearing, and that is prior to the 20th. They're having, this budget is a budget committee meeting. It's not the public hearing on the 6th. It's a budget committee meeting. They have to have a hearing, a public hearing, before, as they then make their votes to support or
Right,
not support.
but that public hearing is on the warrant articles. So we need to have the warrant articles buttoned up for their public hearing, which is what date? Do you know off the top of
I
your head?
do not know.
It's on their
Okay.
budget schedule.
Okay.
It's prior to the 20th, 20th or prior of January.
I don't have my budget schedule with me tonight, so.
Right.
That's the thing I think I was thinking of. I knew there was a meeting
Yes,
before our
yes.
meeting that we had to go over everything twice, so that's what, okay.
Thank you for
They're those
for
cobwebs
bringing
away
that up.
from last
Yeah.
year.
So essentially, there's the Budget Committee's meeting to get public input on how the public feels about what's been presented, which will influence whether they support or not the warrant articles. And then that is then presented, all written up for the community to discuss in the deliberative meeting of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
We were trying to accomplish something while you're gone, but obviously we need you for both.
All right, here's the calendar,
You're-
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Clearly, your role is vital here, Sue. So the Budget Committee has a review meeting on January the 6th. On the 7th, the post notice for the budget hearing. January 13th is the final date to notice for budget/bond hearing. And any petitioned warrant articles. And the actual public hearing is scheduled for January the 14th. The last date that we can have that legally is the 20th, so there
Okay,
is
there it is.
some time
Mhm.
before that date comes in the event of foul weather. And the 26th is the last date to post warrant budget and default. Sorry, last date to post warrant, the budget and the default budget in preparation for the deliberative session, which is on February the 3rd. And then the second session, which is the vote, is March the 10th. So, the question is, if we don't make a decision this evening on those numbers, do we have ample time to get information to the Budget Committee so that they can properly deliberate on that at their next meeting? And the answer to that's no.
I agree.
So were you able to locate those numbers?
Yeah, I had it all along. It's, the current balance is 90,849, but you've authorized up to 70,000 to be withdrawn this year for various items that we pulled out of the budget last year, so that'd bring you down to about 20,000. But the unaudited balance that's to go in there is around 38,000.
Hmm.
So that may bring you up to 50.
Well, does anyone have a recommendation? on what we
I
do
would
with those
prefer
numbers?
to leave the money in the account, just because we are running on older heating systems. Don't we have one boiler at the high school and one 20-year-old furnace at the elementary school?
We have two
Two.
units at the elementary school that are both 20 years old, yeah.
I don't know,
Which is
I don't
life-
know.
Life expectancy, essentially.
Right, so although I obviously think the roof is important also, it just makes me a little nervous taking the money out with that, situation. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think still advised to remove that money. You're correct. With aging facilities, it's a mistake not to have that reserve.
And therefore pay the, essentially the maintenance on our current facilities as we go.
Yes.
And keep that as emergency funds,
Mhm.
as it was,
Mhm.
as it's been used for in the past. And
Mhm.
And the other question, I know I wasn't here at the last meeting, but was there a discussion at all about separating the two roof amounts into two different articles, or did we discuss that at all, about leaving it combined as one, or giving an option of two, or? I don't know, okay.
Yeah.
We've not discussed the
Oh,
articles
okay.
in any
Oh,
way,
okay.
so that's sort of why we're here.
Mhm. Mhm.
so, I guess step one is maybe what is the feeling of taking money from the reserve account, that which was what's described by Article 4, which is the expendable trust fund for the purpose of repairs and maintenance of school facilities, which we could have a balance of between 20 and 50,000 perhaps. I'm hearing that at least a few inclined to think that we should pay for the roof repair with Article 1 and not draw from the that expendable trust fund. Is that the feeling of all? And did you have any thoughts you want to share on that?
I will agree to that. I understand that we run the risk if we don't have a pool of money available. I just, I wonder, $50,000, if we have something big happen, how, I don't know. I don't know.
What's a furnace go for?
I can't even guess.
I would imagine the high school furnace would be an unusual install, so that's not something, it's not like you can run to your local Home Depot and pick one up and...
I know when we talked about replacing the system at the elementary school, that's the whole pneumatic system, we were talking 100,000.
Yeah.
But that's the whole, the
All the
guts and the whole
controls.
controls and everything, so that would have included, but, boy, hard to say.
Yeah, it is there.
Not my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue is the roof that we are repairing is being repaired over a period of probably 8 years. We had a 5-year plan, so that doesn't mean that another section of that roof could be faulty. We're doing the most critical now. There are some other areas there, so that could be an issue too. We're on borrowed time with that roof.
Yeah.
And, for the next 3 or 4 years, we're looking at about a 200 to 300,000 repair to complete that roof, to completely,
To complete
take care
all
of all
roof
of the sections, all of the 13 sections of that roof, right? So,
Yeah, and it's wise to pursue that. You don't, aside from questions about loss of the structural integrity, next thing you have a mildew, or a mold issue. So it's best to stay on that track to continue those repairs. That deferred maintenance will continue to haunt us.
Forrest, you've often spoke as an advocate for using those trust funds for appropriate maintenance in different capacities, and I think rightly so. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
In this case, it would seem to me that to make any kind of meaningful impact on that $192,000, we've never used those funds and drawn them down to the point where we didn't feel we had a reserve in case something came up. We've taken 10,000 here to do bathroom floors. We have taken pieces of it and always kept ourselves a reserve for that emergency. I don't think that there's a way to take a piece that will impact this significantly enough at this point to, we don't want to empty that account.
Right.
And to impact that 192, we'd have to empty that account.
Correct.
And, or, in a significant way. The other thing so I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is. The other thing we can do is as we look at these amounts in these various articles, we haven't set those amounts yet. So we have not set the amount in Article 4. We may perhaps wish to ask for, I'll pick a number, 20,000, double it and say that. That doesn't mean then when the roof bids come in, that if we find we have 10,000 in that account that we can put to that we then don't look at that account for a smaller piece.
Right.
And manage our budget appropriately and accordingly that way. So that at the end of the next year, we'll turn some of that 192 back to the taxpayers if we don't have to use it. Like we anticipate, we turn a little bit back every year, we hope. So I think I'd leave the 192 where it is Because I don't think we can make an appreciable impact on it by draining our account, leaving ourselves open for not having that reserve. And then if we get to springtime and we start putting that roof on, we're gonna get through, maybe we could take a little bit then and make that decision. I think I'd leave it to where it is.
Okay. So I hear consensus on that. I'm not recalling, do we need to vote on each of these warrant articles? I believe we do.
What did you do in the past, Sue? Did you vote on each one of these?
Yes, I believe so, but I'm not sure that you did at this early stage of the game. I was always under the impression that after we had the public hearing and you were ready to present these and make these a formal deliberative session vote, that's when you voted.
Okay.
Because you haven't heard from the public yet, and you haven't.
Right.
So I just,
Yeah.
isn't that correct?
Makes sense.
It doesn't.
That sounds
Correct.
well advised. So, but I'm hearing consensus on that, so we will move forward then,
Can I just ask one quick question?
please.
The roof quote for the work to be done for the 192,000, how long ago was that quote done, and was it a long-term bid that was put out that we do sections? Is it something that the price is renegotiable, or what did we negotiate it? I just want to check how old that quote was.
That's a good question, because we did check, and if you had asked me that question when the price of oil and all those petroleum-based products were high, I would have said, yes, it probably is a low number. But given the state of the economy, if we go out to bid now, you're probably going to find there's a lot of people out there looking for work, and we probably will come in under that. So we did ask that question of the vendor that helped us with this, and it will go out to bid.
Okay, so it will go out to bid again.
yes, it will
Okay,
go out to bid.
so that would be we would be safer keeping the number from the original
Right,
quote,
right.
and if it came in lower,
We would have a savings.
that would be a better situation than possibly something
Right.
that has
Right.
happened the opposite way last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, I'm thinking maybe we should save the amounts for the adding to the these capital reserve accounts towards the end. Does that make sense, or would you rather go in order?
I have some sense of the total picture to do them in order, so.
Okay.
Because I think if you try to do the amounts at the end, you're just gonna go back and rediscuss every individual warrant anyway while you
Sure.
do that, so end up
Okay.
discussing it twice.
I'm really hung up on Article 1 because I'm really concerned that it won't pass, and we really need to fix those roofs. So,
Well, so the alternative that I see is to roll that sum of money into the budget. And,
yeah. Sue, where are we right now with end of the year balance? What is your estimate?
The last report that I gave to you, which I don't happen to have, was around 200,000. Does that ring a bell? Somewhere around
Yeah.
200,000. But I will tell you, since that, we have had some other requests for transportation in the special ed department. So when I come back to you in January, I expect that balance will be slightly lower. I think we have to add another 50,000 to the special ed transportation budget to cover a couple of students, so. You know, it fluctuates like that all the time. It is
Mhm.
early.
Right.
It's hard to say.
No, we have no choice. Those are mandates we're obligated to meet.
The bulk of that balance is from that department. There's probably 50,000 from salary savings in the transition from different personnel. So the bulk of that is in the tuition and transportation in that area, so.
are you suggesting that there's a potential to maybe do some of this work with this year's budget?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Maybe
this.
Yeah, the
this
smaller
is two-
section.
This is two sections.
Yes, it is two sections, and I don't have the breakdown, but one of them was a smaller section, and then the other one was the larger one, so we could try to pick that up out of the balance. That's a possibility.
So would we have the opportunity to get better numbers on how that breaks out before?
Not really. It's really premature because you're not going to be, you're going to be having your deliberative session in February, and really the situation then still leaves you open for
Right.
several months
Several
of
months.
things that could
Yeah.
happen where you would
Yeah.
need to use your surplus.
Right.
So.
Well,
So you're thinking that perhaps if we were to reduce that number, we'd be more inclined to have it pass? What would be a good number to put out there?
$25.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to guess. When we did the elementary roof, I should have gone back and looked at that to see what how that went through. That did go
Yeah.
through, and it was somewhere around 168,000, I want to say.
Yeah, it's just,
No,
that was a different time.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree. I agree.
Well, we've been struggling with this issue now for a number of weeks. I mean, we had discussed building that into the base
Yeah.
budget to begin with,
Oh.
and not taking the risk
Mm-hmm.
of having this not pass with this warrant.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I definitely think that this is the way to go. Keep having it its own separate warrant. I'm just still worried. That's,
If we want to look at using surplus funds from this particular budget instead of the next one to do a piece of this, adjusting it accordingly, then I think we have to put on the table eliminating Articles 2 through 5 in order to do so.
I agree.
And also in instituting some sort of budget chill. I don't use the word freeze, but to cool off this budget to make sure that we are able to do that.
Yeah.
I think there's more to it than just saying, because we could end up with, nothing, because if we don't end up with the money to do it, and then, and the town supports it, and we left one of them out, well, now we're short one of those roofs that we do believe we need. So we'd have to go, I think, that route, and/or find savings in this current year, eliminate things in this current year to make sure that we have the funds to do it.
Yeah, and hope that another event, which we thought might be a contingency, becomes reality in a hurry. Then that will chew down dollars quickly.
So what are the amounts that would be in the reserve for the other accounts, if you don't mind me asking, the other reserves? What are the balances?
The capital reserve has $1,100,455, and that was as of November 30th. And there will be no addition to that one. That one was not voted on, so that one stands.
Right.
Special ed fund, $126,337.
Okay.
And the technology fund is down to $11,456. And again, that's before the addition that will be made of around $38,000 to those three,
To each of those?
to each of those.
Except for the 1
Except
million.
for the 1 million, right.
Hmm.
The additional, the 40% went back to offset the tax rate when we set the tax rate.
So there would be, just so I can check my numbers, for the expansion of school facilities capital reserve fund, there's 1.1 million approximately.
Correct.
That I know the voters said, no, we don't want to add any more money to it until we have a plan as to what we want to do. Then the capital reserve fund for special education is at 126,000.
Correct.
Which is usually about around what it costs if you have one student come into your district, really, and you need to provide those services for them out of district. Then the maintenance and repair, we just were discussing, would run around 50,000, like 58,000, you think, with?
With the addition.
Okay.
With the addition. So the others, you didn't add the addition, but that one
Okay.
you just did, so, don't
All
want
right,
you to get confused.
so it would be 20,000,
20,000.
if I'm being,
And that's
all right.
after the withdrawals that you approved this year, once
Okay.
those are finished and finalized.
And then the technology was down to 11,000.
11,000, correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, getting back to Article 1 then,
Is anyone else, am I the only one that's worried?
Well, I think any any of our articles, any article that anyone's gonna vote for in any town or municipality this year is going to be subject to the same danger. And I think we need to be conscious of that. And, I mean, if the discussion was going to be putting that $192,000 back into the budget so that it's in the budget to cover it, and I was going to, my stance was going to be then we need to find another $192,000 to eliminate.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's where that's at. I think it's important that we, in this economy, bring in a zero tax increase budget. And I believe we've done that. And are we going to take a calculated risk here and there? Probably.
Which you agreed on. We knew this coming
Yeah,
into
yeah,
this.
yeah.
We
And
made these decisions deliberately, so I think, to leave this to the will and the intelligence of the voters to make this decision is our only choice at this point, unless we eliminate something else from the budget. To find another $200,000 means we're going after teaching staff. We're going after other big ticket items. You don't find that kind of chunk of money.
That's correct.
I think we have to also, and I don't mind being the person that does it, but I think we have to present it with a lot of details about, the fact that, we aren't coming to the table asking for money to expand or work on the facilities like we have in the past few years, that we've expanded an 8-year plan and a 5-year plan out to an 8-year plan, that it is about the safety of the kids. And I think we have to explain to them that the, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, urgency of the roof getting fixed. I think we'd have to really explain it and answer their questions and really make clear to them that we're very concerned about this, so that they can hear it out. I also think that we might want to get into this discussion, which is later on the agenda, about the elevator and how that's going to play out, because there's a flip side of what's going to happen with that and the monies that people approved, and whether we can play that somehow too.
And I guess, here's the thing. I'm glad that we're putting it out as a warrant article. I think that's the way to go. I don't want to put it back into the budget. And I do know, and I do realize, we need to let people know, and I know that people will make a sound decision. I guess what I'm trying to do is find a way. I'm trying to find this money. I want to find the money, because, people are losing their jobs right now, and it's such a hard time right now. And I'm trying to find the money. That's all.
As we go through these, perhaps Article 1 will come back to be seen differently. Maybe we need to go through them each, not live at Article 1 for the next half hour, and all of a sudden when we do the rest of them, something pops in our head for Article 1 anyway.
Okay.
Because I think that may happen.
Okay. Fair enough. So Article 2. What are people's thoughts on Article 2? I'll start there.
I'd like to put right on the table the elimination of Article 2.
I am in agreement with that, although I don't think that $1.1 million will really chip into the actual cost of what it will be to expand in the future. I just don't think it's the right time to be putting more money aside until we have
No
a
argument
plan.
that it will, but certainly this is the one article that has been around forever. It has a long history, but until we have something concrete to take to the community in terms of a next step for our school buildings,
right.
I don't see asking for money for, what? We don't know yet. Well,
Right.
that in and of itself is enough reason for me to vote no.
Can I make a suggestion? Do you mind reading the articles out loud so that everybody can be on, people at home probably don't realize what you're discussing,
That's a great idea. Thank you.
if you don't mind.
I don't have a copy, so.
Oh. You're at a distinct disadvantage then. You have all the tools that the television watcher has.
I'm sharing. I have another one.
Well, I'll read Article 2, which is to see if the school district will vote to appropriate $10,000 to be added to the expansion of school facilities capital reserve fund. And then parenthetically, we're looking for a recommendation of the school board and perhaps the budget committee. And that warrant article would require a majority vote. So I don't disagree. Without a clear vision being handed down from the community that this is the direction we're going, I'm not sure it makes sense that even though we're still, I mean, I think it's been a wonderful idea having this and being able to throw money at it over the last, it's been a long time that this has been around, 60-something?
64.
It's as old as me. That's scary.
So where it will be in a year's time or more, but I tend to agree that it's a distraction and not in the spirit of the direction we seem to be at the moment. Linda, what are your thoughts?
I agree.
Mark, do you have anything to speak to on that?
Well, I think it's a good point. I think you've covered the ground in a solid fashion. If we had a concrete recommendation, it would make sense. But difficult times do involve difficult choices. And the notion of ultimately having limited capacity to fund, I'd rather see the money directed towards that roof than a plan which is yet to be developed by the community and the town as a whole.
Or return to the taxpayer.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm hearing consensus there that we will remove Article 2. Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to appropriate a sum of money, $10,000 as a placeholder, to be added to the capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1B for the purpose of educating disabled children. And then looking for recommendations from the board and the budget committee. And again, this is a majority vote to carry. Any thoughts on that one? I want to say, well, Forrest, I know that you have spoken to this eloquently, so maybe I'll rely on you. It's all a matter of timing. In any given year, it's the round figure I hear banded around is about $100,000 for a significantly disabled child's services. However, if we just hit the cycles wrong, it could be about as much as twice that. That would be an ideal number in that account.
Ideally, if I remember our earlier discussions, we had always thought that we wanted this account to have about 18 months worth of worst case scenario in it. Because if you hit that budget cycle just right, a severely handicapped child requires year-round services, so it's not a 9 or 10 month school year you're providing for. So you could, if this child arrives in town on September 1, hello, I'm here, your budget's set, not accounted for, and it takes a $100,000 placement. So it's going to cost you that $100,000 to get you through to June, which you can then build it into your budget for the following year, but you've got those bridge services between June and, or the summertime when things come back in July. It can be 18 months. They arrive March 15th, and now you're not in the budget for this coming year. There's your 18 months when you get to the following, September. So yeah, it is a matter of timing often. We had capped these accounts last year, and I think it's prudent for us to remind everybody that we had instituted some caps that we weren't going to allow these accounts to rise past. Right. And so I'm just trying to I don't remember. This was a 250. So I mean, we're not going to approach the cap with what was our donation to this account this year,
It's gonna
based
be
on the last warrant?
38,000 is going to go to that.
I'm sorry?
38
38?
to the 126, right.
So that brings us to
160.
160 some. So we're still,
So we'll potentially have 160 something in here.
But we know, and it's a great concern, not only with the placements that you've discussed, but when we're looking at the identification of individuals with autism moving in the last decade from 1 in 500 to 1 in 150, and our obligations to fund and provide services for students that are autistic, it's monumental exposure.
I would be comfortable leaving this in and leaving the $10,000 amount
Yeah.
in it. I think it's,
Yes.
you know, it acknowledges the fact that we do need to continue this, but we do anticipate having currently roughly about $170,000
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That should be enough to get us through a year and a portion in a worst-case scenario. And I think this one's an important one to keep up because it is an ongoing real potentiality. So we don't want it to disappear and for people to forget that we have this ongoing potential.
And obligation.
Right, and it is an obligation so that if we did not have the funds set aside, it ultimately is coming out of, it's affecting the education of all the children, really.
Well,
It's an obligation.
If this fund didn't exist, for example, let's say that roof was in the budget and that student showed up. Potential, we'd have to cancel that roof to fund this student for the next 18 months. So there, you know, there's a practical side to, you know, keeping this going, and I think we keep this one on the warrant.
Right. And again, that's not a complaint, that is an obligation. We
Right.
owe
it's
that.
the way it is.
Faith is an obligation
We
in
would-
public education.
We would have to make some choices to
We
come
do.
up with that money.
We do, correct.
So, you know, as a board, we'd have to say,
Yes.
okay, what are we cutting so that we can educate this child?
Correct.
Okay, I'm here, or seeing nodding in agreement, so I think that's enough time then on that one. Article 4, to see if the school district will appropriate this, to vote appropriate, sorry, a little tired tonight. To see if the school district will vote to appropriate a sum, 10,000, to be added to the expendable trust fund under the provisions of the RSA 198:20-C for the purchase of repairs and maintenance of school facilities. Oh, my purpose of repairs and maintenance, it sure does. So we're looking at hopefully having a balance of approximately $58,000 if those unaudited numbers turn to be true, which is the 38,000 plus what's currently in that account, which is about 20,000. Folks' thoughts on that?
I'm torn on this one because I guess I'm torn because it depends on what happens with the vote for the roof, because if I knew that the roof was being taken care of, I would feel comfortable with having 58,000, but because both the facilities are, well, one of them is over 20 years old and the other one is obviously from 1964, still hasn't been fixed, so I'm concerned about sending out a message that, you know, nothing's been solved at the school and we're not going to put anything away to repair it. You know what I mean? I just feel like I'm just not sure.
Rightfully so.
I understand the point, but I see it from another perspective. I believe that Article 4 is Article 1. We are asking for the same thing, essentially. In Article 1, we're asking for $4 for the repair and maintenance of the school facility. And in this particular case, while I have argued strongly for those in the past, again, I think it's a redundant request here. I might look at that and say, well, wait a minute, why are you asking for money to fix the building on number 1, and wait a minute, and fix the building on number 4? Why? I would argue that 4 goes away this year, and we have our potential of our 58,000 for an emergency, and that 4 takes a break this year because we're asking for repair and maintenance money in number 1. While it's for a specific project, we, in the past, would have taken money out of this account to refund something like this, although not something this large.
Well, the only difference is you have a targeted need in number 1 that you've identified. And essentially, hear what you're saying, then we're going to go it with a degree of risk if we forego the additional 58. Is it all tied, or the additional amount raised under this article? Is it all tied to the structure? Yeah, it is. It is.
We've got a 5-year plan to upgrade the roofs that we've stretched out to 8.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems to me like we ought to be back to try to get back onto that schedule at some point, and we're not, with this warrant article, we're not appropriating money. We're should there be a surplus, we are allowing a place for it to go. So I guess I'm not quite seeing it in the same light as you are, Forrest.
Well, I guess where I'm seeing, no, you're right, they're not the same source of funds. But philosophically, I might be more likely to support article number 1 if I'm getting some additional tax relief by not having number 4. I mean, you know, money to offset the tax rate is money to offset the tax rate.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
What state is that roof in right now? Can you explain to me how bad that roof is? People out there are probably watching too. How bad is this roof? What state is it in? Is water pouring into the building at the moment?
Well, Sue, you've worked with this. You've worked with contractors.
Mm-hmm. It has, and we've fixed that. It has been pouring into the building, so we've fixed that. Some of those fixes are temporary fixes with the intent to make some permanent fixes. So you can only patch and repair for so long when you get to the point where you're patching and repairing. So it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I just want currently, right now.
Currently, it's
Right.
patched and repaired. We took care of the most critical sections first, and this again is that plan to continue to go down the path to make sure that we don't have something like
Right.
a complete flood, which
Right.
is likely when you get to over 20 years on a rubber flat membrane roof.
I understand what Mr. Forrest is saying, but I think considering the age of your facilities, it's good to have some money in reserve for repairs. I mean, I think that's a pretty likely scenario. I understand the roof money is a specific repair, but you also need to have some sort of reserve, I think, for potential repairs. You're more than likely going to have them, especially with the age of your heating systems.
Well, I think you're right, Jim. And an area that I have mentioned is we prepared the budget. and
Do you
I
have an
realize
average
we're
of what
making-
I mean, every year is different, but do you have a relative average of what you spend every year on repairs? Emergency repairs?
Emergency repairs? Boy, that's a tough one. There is some money built in for those kind of things, the patch and repair on the roofs, and sometimes we forgo some of the things that are built in to repair. So, I can't really say there's an average, and we do have a contingency.
I realize it's different every year.
It is.
It's all up and down.
Every year it's something
When we
different.
went on the tour during the budget session, I believe there was a classroom at the high school, a French classroom, that had been affected by a leak that had gone down and flooded the classroom and destroyed the textbooks and destroyed the shelter. And so obviously money had to come out of
Right.
the
That was-
budget to replace all of that.
And that was out of
Um,
last year's end of the year surplus.
Right.
What happened was the drain on the top of that roof was plugged, and we had to dig underneath
Was it-
and divert. It wasn't actually the roof, it was
Oh,
the
okay.
drain on the end of the roof, but it did.
And
Okay.
we made this decision to warrant article number 1 for the roof pieces because we did not have a roof that was, while it has reached its age, it's not honeycombed, it's not actively leaking,
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
it's not in danger of collapse. I mean, that's why I'm saying that was a calculated risk as opposed to taking a dangerous chance. I mean, because we don't have a roof that's failed that we need to replace. They as part of normal maintenance, they should be replaced.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had a roof that was, leaking every 3 weeks, then yeah, we'd have to go at this a different way.
Mhm.
I think, and the question is, we do have money in reserve. The question for Article 4 is, do we want to put additional money in reserve? We do have about $58,000 in reserve.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, Sue? This year happens to be a larger portion, a larger section of the roof, so
The
the
next few years.
every year it's not 200,000 replace the roof,
The
right?
next few years, you're
It's-
gonna see that.
Is it gonna be that high?
It is, I mean, it's
Okay, so it's
depending
not
on-
gonna
yeah.
fluctuate,
Yeah, it-
okay.
It was as high as 300,000, but that's where we did the 8-year span, because we knew 300,000 was quite a large chunk, so we tried to break it down a little smaller.
Well, I think eventually.
So that means the total of the project's gonna be almost $1 million to replace the roof.
You're
Sure.
talking 13 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And eventually, we're going to have to address issues of compliance with safety issues and code with the aging structure. So this year, we may have enough cushion in the event that we address that issue and have that identified issue to address. But certainly, if we continue to use that aging facility, you are going to pour significant dollars in.
The roofs that we're speaking of now are, remind me again, I think I asked you this every meeting.
It's the music room and the cafeteria.
That's correct.
Thank you. And if we were going to do renovation in that space,
Those are the newer, that is correct, that is the newer section of the building.
right, so I'm not anticipating that those would be likely areas that would be
Torn,
destroyed
right.
or remodeled to a
Correct.
point where you destroy the roof, but we really don't know
Mhm.
that. I guess the other piece of it is, it's a piece of real property that we need to maintain the value
Yes,
of for
yes.
there's a responsibility to the taxpayers that we have, whether it's the roof or,
Safety issues or others. This is the building we have. We need to do the very best we can to provide a safe environment for our children. And not only is it a matter of obligation, but it is a matter of, that fiduciary relationship that we have with taxpayers to act responsibly with those dollars.
Linda, what are you thinking on this? Do you have anything to add?
I would like to see it stay, and I would be very comfortable with that 10,000 figure.
Forrest, do you have any more comment on that one?
No.
Okay. Jill?
I agree with Linda. Although I understand Forrest's point that we do want to make sure that that roof gets passed, I still think that when a decision hasn't been made and that, except for the community deciding that they want to somehow renovate that structure, we have to maintain the integrity of the structure in order to be able to ultimately solve the problem. And so I think we do have to just, even if putting 10,000, and again, that's if there is a surplus, so we don't know if there's going to be a surplus.
Yeah.
That's just if there is, let's
Right.
try to plan the right way. So I think we should leave it on there.
And comparatively speaking, $10,000 isn't a small amount of money, but
Right.
in comparison to the magnitude of some of the other numbers we're talking about, it's really, it's not a huge chunk of cash. And I don't see it as its presence leading anyone to vote against Article 1, I guess is. a
I
thought
think we just have to make sure that we are very clear about the difference between them when we're explaining it to people, and make
Right.
sure that they understand why we feel we need to leave this on there.
And certainly leaving it on there gives us the opportunity to have it as part of the discussion in the deliberative session, and where if the mood of the room is to zero it out, then that will be what happens. Okay, Article 5.
Before we move on, I'd request you consider a vote on leaving Article 4 on or not. The others, we've had five votes, 5 people in consensus, or 4 in consensus. So
Okay.
I think
Forrest
we're on
wants
the
to go on the
record with this
record.
one.
Sure. Okay, I'm amenable to that. So with that in mind, Well, is there a motion to, that is, I guess, a motion.
I'll make a
perhaps.
motion to remove Article 4 from consideration.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that. I'll second.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, so all those who are in favor of removing Article 4, as it's printed here, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Thank you. Article 5. Would someone mind reading this? I did such a good job reading the last one. I'd like to,
Go ahead.
Maybe,
I've got.
I can do it.
thank you.
Article 5, to see if the school district will vote to appropriate a sum to be added to the expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 19820-C for the purpose of purchasing technology equipment. Equipment includes replacing computers at the junior/senior high school and at the elementary school, printers, and additional equipment software for classroom use.
Any thoughts on Article 5? Thank you.
There's a kind of hanging parenthesis there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's one that should be before equipment. I just added that. I think that's where it's missing.
Okay.
Right there, yeah.
So there's 11K in there now, and what are we putting in?
38.
38, so it would be about $49,000 total.
I'm comfortable with removing that one.
Me too.
I was gonna, and for different reasons, I was gonna suggest we removing this one. This one, in the last 3 years I've been involved, has always been, we have shifted things out of the budget with the plans on using this money, with specific plans. This year, we've not planned to shift anything out that we discussed. We've removed items from the budget with no concept of funding them elsewhere, so I think this one freezes.
I agree.
And I agree, and I think we might all have similar but slightly different reasons. But so we have consensus, I believe, to remove Article 5. And I'd like to give you folks an opportunity to convince us otherwise. I guess if that's
I concur with that decision. I think we make choices with other dollars that will be available because of priorities that we have to assign, either to software, hardware, or personnel expenditures. We can live with that.
okay. Thank you. Forrest, could you help me with the reading of the next one?
Sure. Article 6, to see if the school district will raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget, posted with the warrant, or as amended by the vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein totaling $14,270,987. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $14,270,987, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Newmarket School District or by law, or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Part 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. And again, the normal recommendation language lies at the end. Note, this warrant article operating budget does not include appropriations in any other warrant article.
Thank you, Forrest. Thoughts on the budget warrant article number 6? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of work went into the preparation of that budget, and, I think it would be great if the superintendent could talk to the decisions that the administration made to get to this and to get us where we are.
Yeah, there were a lot of sacrifices made. I had mentioned when we reported back to you, with the choices that we were advocating, given the hope of not increasing percentage-wise our budget, with the infusion of revenue and the reduction of expenses, we ended up with $400,000+ of cuts to achieve that. And textbooks, we made difficult choices with textbooks, foregoing textbooks. We made personnel decisions that will be painful in terms of a reduction in force, equipment, and I wanted to acknowledge, and I did, that from the inception of this budget process, we had candid discussions, Sue and I, with the administrative team concerning the likelihood that we would be looking at severe cutbacks. We knew as much as, in my estimation, the budget, initial budget, did not include frivolous requests. It was not a wish list. Certainly, I would never advocate preparing, and I know Sue wouldn't either, a wish list budget. But with the acknowledgement of challenges that citizens face personally, in terms of limited income, increasing expenses, any percentage increase would be a tough sell. So we went to the default budget as a ceiling in terms of expenditures. The team came together and we worked hard within a week's time frame to come up with that $400,000+ reduction. But those were heartfelt sacrifices that were made to reach that level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just, I think I said this last time, but I just want to make sure that we're clear. There is an increase of about 2.4% in the budget itself, over the budget for this year. However, due to the increase in revenue that Mark talked about, we anticipate there be no increase in the tax rate.
Yes.
So I don't want people to come in and say, well, wait a minute, you said there was no increase in the budget. It was, it's $380,000 higher. Yes, it is.
Right.
But there's $380,000 in additional revenue to offset that increase. So our goal, as I stated earlier, was a zero increase in the tax rate, and that is what we believe we have accomplished.
That's correct.
Thanks for providing that clarity. Anyone else have any comments on the budget article?
Just a question on the pre-review, Sue.
Yes.
With the change in language for the articles that remain for reserve accounts, will there be time to resubmit this for another review?
To DRA?
To
Yes,
Jean Sams?
I will
And then
send it to her.
once we do that, if it's possible, for the budget committee meeting on the 6th, I'd like at least to have copies of this for the budget committee, because there was some confusion or concern last year over the very advice that has been given us in the first mandatory change here.
Yeah, this is a new format, too. I wonder
Yeah.
if this has come about because of those
So-
kind of questions. This is new.
What requires a budget committee recommendation, what's not allowed to have a budget committee recommendation, that was a major discussion last year, and I think it's important for everyone to know from the Department of Revenue Administration what's required.
Yeah.
Because we got into it a little bit last year over, well, why aren't we allowed to recommend or not recommend that one as a budget committee?
I just want to make sure I'm clear, though, on the two articles that you are leaving, you want me to add the language about to be funded from surplus?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. So, Article 7 is to transact any business which may legally come before the meeting, which is essentially doesn't need discussion, I don't believe. So I guess we're back to Article 1. And one thing that I'm troubled by is here we are in December, trying to guess what a quote is going to be on for some roofing work that won't be done for quite some time in an economy that's very volatile. Can we put language in here, maybe we can't, that says not to exceed a value? I'm not
You can.
I don't know if that's implicit in the language already, but,
Well, I guess what you're saying, you couldn't add any money to your budget anyways, but if you put in the not to exceed, then you limit yourself in actually doing the project. You
Right.
could have means, so say for instance, it came in at 200,000, and you as a board decided you still wanted to go forward, but you were gonna take the additional 8,000 out of your maintenance fund. So by putting in the not to exceed, then you might be tying your hands and halting the project, when in fact you could have taken the money from some other source. So, was that what your intent was?
my intent is to not inadvertently appropriate money that won't be spent and then have it, in so doing, become part of a budget surplus and rolled into the general fund.
I don't think you can do that.
Can't do that, you really
Because if you
can't.
do that, what you're doing is erasing all the dollars,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
from your warrant article.
Right.
I mean, you can't put on the warrant article to raise enough to pay for whatever the bid on the roof is, and that, if you do the not to exceed, that's sort of what you're trying to do. I think we have to raise and appropriate a specific amount of money, and just like the elevator we're going to discuss, if we don't spend it, then it goes back. If we don't spend, we can't spend that on anything else
Right.
than the roof, and if we don't spend all of it, then it will go back to surplus to reduce the tax rate in a future year.
And can we put that in the warrant? If any funds that don't get spent will go back to, will not become part of the.
Well, I think that's the way warrant articles work, and that's the general, so you could put that on all of
With
them.
the
But
It did-
elevator.
yeah,
Elevator.
it didn't with the elevator.
As far as,
We
If,
c-
we're not, at this point in time, we're not doing the elevator
Right.
project, so we have $225,000 that effectively rolls into budget surplus.
Right.
Which then can inadvertently fund these,
if you choose to do that, that's the only thing it can do. It becomes part of surplus, and if you choose to put your warrants on there this year and use surplus, then you make that decision to use that surplus. Technically, it's fund balance and goes back to offset the tax rate, but when you ask for the approval to fund those out of surplus, then you negate that. So you could not put those articles on there, and it would be part of the tax.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's your choice to make that decision to fund those out of surplus. That's why I had said, well, I thought that your intent was not to use your surplus. That's why I took that out of your
What
articles.
we're doing this year.
Right.
Right.
Because the reason we're changing the wording of our warrant articles and including specific amounts is to make darn sure that the elevator money is in surplus and goes back. Because our wording in the previous has been,
Up to-
40% of any surplus up to X dollars
right.
for that item. So we want to make sure that we don't add up those X dollars and all of a sudden that elevator money's not there or part of it. So that's why we went to the specific amounts. Same thing what could or would be done next year.
So can we avoid that whole exercise that we're going through now with the wording of Article 1, I guess is my question.
He wants to put something in, you want to put something in there that says, once we use what we need, the rest goes back to the taxpayers. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
But that's a given.
Oh, yeah.
That
That's
is,
a
I mean,
given
that's
within
just
the
the way
law.
all of them
Okay.
work. So you can put that in there just to make it clear, but you might confuse people.
But then DRS
because-
will say you can't
Why are you
because the
putting that?
language
Yeah.
is.
And,
Right,
and
that's
here's,
it, yeah.
and here's another question. What if, the end of this year, we find that we do have enough money in surplus to do the roof?
We could do that.
Could we, if we did that, could we put wording in Article 1 to say, if at the end of this year we have enough money, we will not appropriate those funds, we will,
You've already if you get the approval to appropriate, you'll already appropriate it, it will be set, the tax rate will be set with that money. So you can't renege that by saying it's going to go, it will become part of surplus again if you don't use it, but
I
it's
think
going
the
to be
actions we
used.
take with the elevator money, assuming it goes where I think it's gonna go, sets the stage for good faith for us to handle that, you know, if there's you know, if that 192s, there's pieces of it left, that would do the same thing next year. I think I'd keep it simple.
Okay.
I think my biggest concern is making sure that the amount of money we have in there is the amount of money we need to actually get the job done, because that didn't happen when it came down to the elevator. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that we have the proper amount of funds in there so that we're not in a situation where we're faced with making different decisions than we thought we were making when the vote went through.
You raise a good point with that, Ruth. You know you're stretching out the number of years to address that plan. So, depending on what you get into, what you discover, yeah, you may not have enough money to address it. So I don't think there are going to be excess funds available for that purpose.
A roof, though, is well, we've got 13 roofs that need attention, or maybe there's 10 of them that need attention, different roof surfaces. So I'm hoping that unlike an elevator where it's not an elevator until the whole elevator's built, if the expense of the roof, you know, the quote comes in at 200,000 round figures, it's more than this amount. Well, maybe we can then look at doing different surfaces of the building.
Yeah, get back on schedule.
Well, the other thing to keep to try to compare it to apples and apples in my head is, if the elevator had not eaten up classroom space, which was the larger consideration in my mind why I voted to not do it, we might have been willing to find the extra $12,000 or $13,000 that it took over top of the warrant to pay for it. But there were more concerns. As Cliff said, it wasn't an elevator till it was an elevator. So we weren't willing to to accept the impact of that installation on education when it turned out to go where it had to go. So I think it's a bit, I think I'd be willing to find, $7,000, $8,000 if we're a little short to finish the roof. I mean, that's not, you got to do that differently.
But I also think that the elevator was quoted back in October of 2006, and when it was voted on, it was March of 2008. And it was an improper quote with a different type of elevator that was ultimately required by the state. So it wasn't just a few thousand, it was like $35,000 more than the original quote, or something that the law had changed. So we were looking at a larger chunk of money, and we were looking at cutting out classroom space too, to try to solve that problem.
So we're moving away from the discussion of the warrant articles, and we need to do that.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to not cloud Article 1 with the elevator discussion too much. So what are our feelings on Article 1 at this point then? Do we want to keep it as written?
I think so. The only question I had that might have changed my mind about the amount was if there were sections that, if the cost was could be decreased by looking at different sections that might have been a little less expensive. But it sounds like we're at the point where it's pretty much an average cost per year to replace this roof. So I'm comfortable with it the way it is.
Linda?
Same
Okay.
thing.
So I think we're done with the warrant as it stands there then. Thank you.
Let's talk about that.
I'm wondering if since we've started the discussion on the elevator, if we should just carry on with that, moving it up from the business department piece till now, so that we don't lose track of those thoughts. Mark, maybe you can give an introduction on what discussions you've had within this past week.
Does everyone have a copy? Well, based on our last discussion, I indicated that I would speak with Dan Bethan, and also the firm that would do the installation if we were to move ahead with this elevator.
That's the firm that was the lowest bid
Yes.
on
Right.
process. Thank you.
So, yesterday, Mr. Bassan and a representative from the firm, Dennis Anderson, that would complete the installation, met with me. Sue had contacted them initially at the high school. So what are the possibilities? If we were to go ahead with this elevator, incursion into the classroom is an issue. What about interior installation? Well, that was not a suggestion that was well received, and I've asked for a summary of points related to placement. One of the issues we said that we needed to discuss is if there is a renovation, if there is an additional floor, are we throwing dollars away? He's addressed that as well, and has made a recommendation that we can install an elevator, if you choose to do that, that has the capability and capacity to extend to another floor. What are the cost changes? And I've asked for a summary of that as well. And it talks about material, labor, and they're estimating if we were to move ahead with this, the cost would now be in the range of $280,000 to $286,000. Now, Sue had contacted the state education department, Sue, and what was the response there in terms of participation?
Well, it would be eligible for building aid, so you could put in your application for building aid. Although you wouldn't receive any of those funds this year, 30% of the total cost, actually I'd have to run it on the new number, would be, if we use the 286,
Would be reimbursed.
we'd be reimbursed the $85,800 over 5 years for that project. So we'd be getting roughly $17,000 a year to help fund that cost.
And that was confirmed with the discussion
Ed
that
Murdo,
you had.
correct.
Yeah.
So it is eligible for building aid if you put it on the outside and
Yep.
add it to the building.
There is an incursion, there's no doubt about it, in classroom space. And the issue, do we meet minimum requirements? And we'll have to verify that for instructional space based on student occupancy. But again, for your consideration, we said we would get figures, updated figures, and in terms of possibilities. And we have done that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The, do we have any new, or maybe you can give a quick summary of where we are with expectations of, like, presently in that building, there isn't any students that require the use of the lift on a ongoing basis.
That's correct. There is not. There is not.
But my understanding is that there are some students coming up through the younger grades
Yes.
that utilize wheelchairs for transportation, and unknown is, any parents or teachers that might also, or other visitors that might require the use of assistance to get to the second floor. Are there any updated need expectations from the student standpoint, I guess, is probably the best we can do?
I don't have anything to add in terms of what student use would be. I think the issue is twofold. Certainly, visitors to the building, be it parents, relatives, others. Certainly, I would think, would feel uncomfortable with that current lift that exists in the stairwell. And again, it's speculation on my part. I know how I would feel if I had to use that lift. It's awkward. While that stairwell is being used to have that movement, I won't go as far as to say that we would end up with some type of citation, but it's right on the edge.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for getting this information so that we can make the best decision. And the new quote that came in is for an external
Yes,
elevator,
yes.
but the internal elevator and that stairwell would be the only option of having the optional third floor added, or you could do it on the side
On the
too.
external. This includes
Okay.
the capability to go up one more floor.
And is the building as it is built right now capable of having a third floor put on the structure the way it's built right now?
I would not want to speculate on that. Certainly, what the question
think it
was
is.
if we go up to a third floor. I do know, in going through the building with the architect, there are issues with that most recent addition. And always issues that will come to light when you start probing seriously about that type of expansion. Interior walls, mechanicals, the way that building was constructed in the 60s certainly would not meet today's standards. We'd like to pump a lot of money even into the newest addition if we pursue renovation.
It is my understanding that in its current condition, you cannot go up. Now and you can't add a floor to
Right,
it.
but you can
can't
only-
just add a floor to
Right.
it.
You can only rip the,
I'm
we,
sorry?
we had discussions about ripping an entire section of the building down and then building up 3 floors, but you
Right.
can't
That's
actually
where we
add
go.
on to the structure as
Yeah.
it is.
Right.
I thought
My memory
that was-
says that in all of our discussions, it was clear that you couldn't just add a third floor to solve the space problem. Structurally, it would not be possible.
Yeah,
And
that's
that was
the-
that was back
In
from
any
the
part of the
futures
building.
meetings. I mean, there were many
Especially
discussions.
in 1924, but 1960s
Yeah.
as well.
You're looking at a combination of renovation, which really involves major reconstruction and demolition. Significant demolition.
So is it worthwhile building a 3-story elevator for a building that can only go up 2 stories?
This would not be built for 3 stories. It has the capability of expansion.
Was that 286, there's that number in,
No.
No, because it's
doesn't
No.
include the 10 to 15,000?
No.
Okay. Is that, yeah.
Right.
I understand.
So I guess the issue is, what do we want to do? We are using the building. It's what we have. It's the here and now. Realistically, it may be 5 to 10 years off before anything is addressed significantly in terms of a major renovation, reconstruction, or a choice as to location of other facilities, whatever that facility may be.
Can you speak, you haven't, I'm sorry, Jill, go
No,
ahead.
I'm just waiting for a minute. I'm just thinking
Um,
before I speak. Getting my
You weren't
emotions
part of
down.
this process when we went through it and decided not to proceed. I was wondering if you could add anything on your perspective as to we know that the state education standards for square footage in 2 middle school classrooms, where those 2 rooms are small compared to the standard, and we'd be taking a hallway width space out from them. Can you speak to on a practical standpoint, how less effective teaching will be in that space? It's kind of a hard.
Well, if it's laboratory space, which it is not, and that's one of the reasons there was a decision or a recommendation not to go with the center elevator, it, I think, begs a different issue, where you're tearing out prime space used for significant instruction related to the course content. And a casual observation that I made, I did not see that issue in the rooms. They are not facilities used in a technical program or in a scientific program. But certainly, we will have to answer that question specifically if this is something that you want us to pursue and consider.
And I also want to make a point that there's no storage closet space in those classrooms as far as like a built-in closet, so you're also cutting into an already lacking classroom size. It's not even just instruction, but just for, storing things for instructing.
It's a matter of tough choices, Jill, is really what it comes down to. Every time you deal with a structure that's in existence with little latitude in terms of funding for significant expansion, it's always a compromise or a priority, combination of the two.
So, yeah, and that really frames it well in that, how high of a priority is having an elevator?
That is the question.
We've had all these points, and I guess just to reflect back on a comment that I made at the last meeting, that, on our last warrant, there were many warrant articles that were defeated, but this one was not one of them. There seemed to be a tenor in the community that people felt it important to do that. So I don't want to dismiss it out of hand. And I don't want to belabor it every meeting either.
But I also want to point out that amount on the warrant articles was also the least amount of money that people had to approve on a warrant article also. So it might not have been necessarily that they were supporting the elevator. They might have just been supporting giving some money to the schools, maybe a smaller amount than one of the other warrant articles was asking. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, you never know what the reasoning is of why they voted for that.
Certainly, sorry for my absence there for a moment. But I saw that elevator article in a way as a litmus test for where we were in this facilities process. We had some feedback that had come back from our survey that indicated the community was in favor of some sort of renovation. And then to turn around and support a major expenditure on the building did nothing but further support that in my mind. And I think while we have been idle on it for the last 6 or so months, I think we need to begin to, present a couple of plans on renovation, put some stuff together, and this elevator needs to be part of those plans. But again, one of the things we talked about when we decided not to do it was not to hamstring ourselves with putting an elevator in a spot, and then now, all of a sudden it scuttles to potential renovation plans because it's in the wrong spot, or heaven forbid you got to tear it down to get the renovation done. So I think it becomes part of the larger discussion, and we need to return to having that larger discussion.
Is this elevator going to be, is the proposed location on a newer section of the school that would more than likely survive the renovation effort?
You're playing odds.
Yeah, you're playing odds. In some way, shape, or form, will that footprint be there? Probably. Will the structure be modified significantly from steel, concrete, upward? No. No. Probably wouldn't recognize that wing when it's completed.
I know in the past we've discussed restarting a facilities committee. Has that begun?
No, we have talked about that, and we agreed that there's something we need to address and get front and center, whatever is decided, once this budget process is complete. The decision was that let's get through this budget process and then really hone in, and it will be in my estimation, in discussions with numerous individuals, prior board members that served in the 70s and 80s, that were having these discussions.
Sounds like you might need some engineering help here
Yeah.
to see what's feasible with that building.
Well, feasible and, what's recommended in terms of a solution, I think ultimately will lie with this group. I think it's ill-advised to revisit every single option that you have over the last 4 or 5 years. That redundancy, frankly, I think will solidify resistance. I think what it will come down to is, it is, in my estimation, our charge to come up with some type of viable solution. Not in a vacuum, but that's what we're elected, you are elected, I am appointed to do. To make ultimately a recommendation that we bring forth and not do a time-consuming, redundant dance for 2 or 3 years.
Considering the money that you're sinking into the building just in maintenance, it makes sense to finalize some sort of decision. Because, when roofs cost this much, and elevators cost this much, we're putting this kind of money into a building that needs, are we going to keep it?
Well,
We need, this needs to be.
yes. And I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the board in this. But certainly, in a period of reflection, yes, are we going to renovate? Are we going to have that building there, somewhere else? Or are we going to have a building in Newmarket?
We as a town need to decide this.
That's right. So it's not just, is it renovation? Is it a new building? Where?
Exactly.
And I think we're going to have to come to grips with
We
it.
need answers.
Yes.
I think we were talking about getting community feedback in January at some point and trying to get groups of people to come out with their opinions and their concerns, and I don't know where we've gone
Well, I think
with that.
those are the central
Right.
questions.
Right. As far as the elevator goes, obviously we spent a lot of time talking about it, and we're all concerned about doing the right thing. I think, I don't know if it's a blessing in disguise or it was not, but I think I think we've done everything thoughtfully. I think that the amount of money that was on that original vote was not the right amount, so obviously put us in this precarious situation. But I think I agree with Forrest that I think we need to send the money back to the taxpayers and get a better plan and include that elevator as part of our our future vision as to what's going to happen with this building. That's just my opinion.
Linda?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tend to agree as well, and I just want to thank everyone for maybe allowing me to belabor the point and going through this exercise of, again, thinking about it, because it's making appropriate accommodations for the public in that building is critical, but not and not to be taken lightly. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
enough said. Thank you for for doing that that homework again.
You have to do this because
Okay.
last time.
So then to the Durrell Woods open space easement process. It's unfortunate that Chet's not here this evening because
Chet was ready to make the presentation, yes. But Sue and I will give you an overview of what transpired. Sue, myself, Surveyor Doucette, Chet, Attorney Bronstein, Dan Bassan, and our town administrator attended a meeting to discuss the securing of an easement in the Durrell Woods open space for the ultimate purpose of adding a playing field. Not for structural additions to property. We would not, part of that easement, would not entitle us to build it would be to use land. Now, there would be down the road, if it's deemed viable financially, possible financially, to add a playing field. That would be an ideal location. But we cannot even think in those terms unless we have that easement. So what it was decided initially is to stake out the corners of the property that would be involved in the easement, so individuals could observe the scope of the property under discussion. Then have an informational night, maybe at the elementary school, to discuss utilization, not only with abutters, but with all citizens in the Durrell Woods development. We would have the surveyor present. We would not need to have an architect, Dan Bassan, present. He has a history in terms of knowing the footprint of that property, but not looking at the building of a facility. You know, he has good advice because he has good history with the district. But have Peter Bronstein there to address any legal issues. And I think it's important to have the town planner there to address any questions as well. Our estimation is, and I believe Ed concurs, that we do not need to go through lengthy proceedings with the planning committee. Since this is only an easement, we're not looking at a subdivision. But certainly, we would have to engage legal counsel to work that out with the appropriate bodies in the town as well. So the desire is, certainly, and there's a lot of wisdom in having land available. It's not purchasing land, and not only school children benefiting, but citizens in general by the addition of another playing field be used in the community. So we wanted to hear your feelings on this. Is this something then you would like us to pursue and schedule after the holiday? We'd like to do this as soon as possible. We'd like to have something in January so we can move forward on this, get a feel from the residents in the area, other interested parties, before we proceed with the formal securing of the easement itself.
Can I ask a quick question? What's the time frame we're looking at as far as anything getting started there? And obviously I know that there's a lot of steps along the way that might change that, but do we have to put money into the budget to actually create the field?
Yes, sure.
So that won't be happening any time in the next year then. It's
No,
going to be
not.
probably 2 years out.
Right. We're going to spend dollars to secure the easement itself. We're going to have legal fees. We're going to have surveying fees. You know, we're going to have $10,000, $15,000, my guesstimate, Sue, in terms of what it will be just to secure the easement.
I'm just thinking about, my daughter's in first grade, but I'm thinking about, I don't know how old the playground structure is that's there, but I'm thinking about a day like today or yesterday when the kids get to go outside and you've got 70, 80 kids in
Yeah.
really on a sidewalk
Right.
trying to, safely play and get some fresh air and get some exercise, and it just, it's just too bad.
And that's the thought
I know.
process behind this. I mean, the sooner we can move on this, the better. And Chet's been certainly a significant advocate for that. You know, as Chet keeps saying, there isn't a safe place to kick a ball over there.
And I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the budget cuts and when they do that the wonderful physical education programs over there with the bike riding and how there's that whole pavement issue with that flooded, and I've seen it because I did the walk there one day, and, that's limiting them too, so I just hope this can move along
We
quickly.
have possibilities. Certainly, there are dollars, and Jim, you can probably speak to it in a certainly more knowledgeable way, that have been raised by the town for the securing of properties for recreation. And, that may be a resource that we can tap into as well. And is that correct? There was money raised, yeah.
Personally, I think it's a great idea. I mean,
Yep.
it's the only piece of land you're going to have available to
It
you,
is.
and it's a fairly inexpensive investment to
Yeah.
obtain it. So.
And I know, we can all think of ways to direct dollars, but I know my perspective, and granted, it's biased. It's biased for children. It's one of the reasons I've been advocating for some participation in the revenue source coming in from the Comcast franchise. It allows us to make some choices directly related to enhancement of the program at the high school and potentially free up some other dollars to move in another direction.
Well, my thoughts on this are that I think we're about 4 years into this process, which seems to me, on the outset, that it was pretty straightforward and it was a win-win for all of the community. I haven't heard, any feedback from anyone in the Durrell Woods area that
No?
that spoke negatively of it. So, absent that, I don't see any opposition to it. And even if it's not developed as a play field, once we secure it, it's ours to use for an outdoor learning environment.
Of course it is. And that's you're right, exactly right.
Immediately.
It's a laboratory.
Mm-hmm. So,
Could that be a potential laydown area for construction of future school facility? Can that
No.
be used for such?
No, not under
This
these.
is-
There's
You cannot
co-
build on it. It's limited to green space.
Laydown
only.
area being a temporary area for construction debris and can't be done.
Limited to green
So now
space
you're
only.
dealing with the renovation, you're having a problem with finding an area to use.
well, and this is behind the elementary school, which certainly
Yeah.
doesn't have the same.
It's in the proximity, but.
And short version, this was originally going to be a gift to the school district with no restrictions. It morphed into an easement. Frankly, originally, we were planning to potentially fix our elementary school space problems and maybe do a little building back that direction. But we were told very directly that this was green space only, and
Right.
it still has great benefit at that, but it's not going to solve any square footage space in the footprint of the elementary school.
And I know Chet spoke to the Cheney family, and they've been very generous. And frankly, what I have a second hand, they're saying, what's the holdup? When are you going to move on this? Let's move this thing and bring it to completion.
Can I ask a question? And this might be something that can be discussed later, but once the easement is secured, I know there's a path that leads through there to the fields as they stand right now, but there's some project going on that's expanding the fields that are there. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible, and obviously this would be a decision by the school and the staff, but that the children could be brought through a path to one of the fields during one of the recesses I don't know how far that is into the woods. I've never walked that. I don't
believe-
know.
I don't believe the properties are contiguous, number one. And I believed in order to do that, you would have to cross to private property to do so.
Right.
To walk from the elementary school through that easement area into the back of Landrock Field would be through private property.
And I know that river is there also, which makes me a little nervous, so I throw it out there.
Yeah, who knows what's down the road? Who knows what possibilities are down the road? But conventional wisdom really is that if you can secure property near your school building, abutting property, then really we should do so.
For $10,000 to $15,000, it's a
Oh,
good investment,
yes.
considering the amount of land you
Mhm.
don't have available to you.
So, as fast as you can, Make it so, I guess is my feeling.
Are we hoping to maybe come up with a date when we could have that potential meeting with the abutters, informal meeting with the
Right,
abutters?
we'd like to do that in January
January.
sometime.
And,
Now, I know we have a number of things, budget
Right.
things to take care of, but we'd like to get a meeting in January. And I know budgets certainly are important, but many times things get put on hold in December, January because of budgets, and I hate to lose this momentum.
Is January 15th too late?
It's not too late, no.
no, that might be a good date, because that's in between your board meetings and doesn't interfere with any other town meetings.
But the other meeting that we have is the 14th, right?
The 13th. So that would be 2 meetings in that week.
I
Your
thought-
public hearing.
I thought it was the 14th.
It is the 14th.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yes, the
Public hearing.
public hearing is scheduled for the 14th.
Yeah.
You know, even if you were moving in that last week in January, if we get it in January sometime, I think plenty of time to start moving on this.
And it can't be during a school board meeting? It's something
We
separate?
wanna hold it will be a meeting because you're all present,
But
but
it's the
it'll
meeting
be
with-
a separate meeting with a one agenda informational item.
Probably hold it at the elementary
Yes,
school.
yes, right.
Round
Make it
table sort
convenient.
of
Yep, yep.
format.
Is there any reason we couldn't dedicate our school board meeting on the 22nd to
Right.
this item?
Absolutely not.
Sounds good to me.
When's your deliberative session?
February 3rd.
So that's the last meeting before your deliberative.
Oh,
I don't know if that, I don't
Here
know.
you
if
go, throwing reason in again.
Sorry, I just thought you,
It doesn't,
Yeah, but
well,
that
and it wouldn't have to
doesn't-
be the only item.
You
We
could add to
You
it.
can open
You
with
could
a
add-
public
right.
hearing and
You
have
could
a
add
short,
to it anything
have a short
critical.
business
Right.
meeting when the public
Yeah.
hearing's
Right,
finished.
right.
good.
I mean, if we need a
Right.
few items.
But we'll make that part of the program that night. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think.
If we held it there, it would be difficult to have that live on television, which is, I mean, I think it's a time of the year that people tend to tune in maybe more to gather information on,
Is there a reason?
They have remote cameras.
They can remote.
Can I ask what the advantage is to having it at the elementary
Yeah.
school in the dark? I mean, not that the inside of the school will be dark, but it's not like it'll be a Saturday where you can go out and look at the space. I mean, so
Yeah.
we could hold our meeting in the basement that, that evening.
We could.
And,
Yep, we
for
could.
any group,
could.
I don't think it gives us an advantage to be at the
No,
elementary
it's
school.
just convenient for the residents, but is it essential? Hold it there.
No, it's
No.
not that far.
No, and maybe what we could do is, excuse me, during that day, have people available.
Good idea.
If people are interested in going and seeing it beforehand, during the day when it's light, we could have people available to show that piece of the property.
So I'll ask the surveyor to go ahead and stake the corners out right away.
Can I suggest that you maybe open that up for Saturday the 17th for people to go and see it? Because, I mean, frankly, the day of the 22nd, if you're at work, it's, by the time you get home, it's dark.
Yeah.
So,
Or
if
we'll
we do
get-
want, if we do want people to walk it and look at it, then it's,
Right.
and you need to secure the appropriate permissions and
Yes, right.
issues of liability for allowing, the public to walk what remains at this point private property.
So 17th is what we're targeting for the potential walkthrough. 22nd, so we've got the 22nd
Mm-hmm.
on the program. Downstairs
We wanna
in
have
the
a-
auditorium.
Yeah.
well, do we want to start our meeting at 6 that night so that we have?
Yeah.
That's fine. And can I just throw out that, and I know we were gonna, talked about in January possibly having that whole public come forward about what to do about the facilities. It might be, obviously with everything going on, better to push it off to after the deliberative session in February, so that we have the deliberative session, we have the public, we talk about the budget, we kind of get a little bit of closure on that, and then possibly get into the facilities things at the second meeting in February? Is that too far away? Is that too early?
Facilities, it's too early. It's too early. We need to have some discussions, certainly, in terms of a game plan.
I thought we were we had talked about that and that we were going to invite the public at this point to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
Well, I think it's important, but I think, we've got to have a discussion in terms of concrete, what the potentials are, and do you buy into those potentials?
When do you think would be an appropriate time to have
Well, I
that
think we should be
discussion?
doing that in February at our meeting, but I'm not sure we would have that informational night related to that topic,
Was it information gathering or information sharing?
information gathering.
So, perhaps at our first meeting in February, then, we can have a kickoff discussion.
A work session.
Among the board.
We need a work session on the board.
I already did that.
Okay, well, we certainly have a little bit of time to
We do.
hammer out those,
We do.
those details.
Frankly, I think you're right. We have the budget, but I think now it's important that we be successful in this acquisition. And we need to experience, quite candidly, a success in this area and not muddy the waters with other things.
Okay. So more to come on meeting program
Mm-hmm.
for the month of February.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't know what level of survey, I don't know a whole lot about the survey process, but if we can get stakes in the four corners where they
Right.
are within
Yes?
a few feet, I think it will probably be a level of accuracy sufficient for a walkthrough, not a legal survey stake that's,
And we've had that
got 12
conversation.
satellites lined
Yeah.
up with.
He's ready to roll.
Okay, great. Super. Okay. Jim, do you have anything to talk about tonight?
Actually, I do. I have a question from the chairman of the town council for you. Originally, we had scheduled a meeting for October 21st between the school board and the town council. Now, due to scheduling conflicts, that meeting was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And he would like to have a definitive answer on whether you are still agreeable to having a joint meeting regarding the school board and the town council. And basically it would be to discuss cost sharing and mutual cost sharing between the two, the school board and the town, and also procurement. And that's up to you to answer
Okay.
and deliberate.
Well, my initial thoughts are, yes, certainly we're willing to talk with the council. There was something that we had struggled with, as part of it was specifically what the agenda would be.
He made it clear that it was mainly to do with cost sharing and procurement. I did make mention that I know that Sue has been working with Don Parnell on that, but nonetheless, I am the messenger. So.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'll continue then with, we have certainly, through our budgeting process, had various discussions, and I know on an ongoing basis, the school district is working with regional cooperatives, SES, for purchasing school supplies and whatnot. And I know there have been discussions regarding collaborative buying, and I guess I'm not seeing the value in a board level discussion where I'd rather spend our time talking about policy in getting into the minutia of how Sue and Dawn can best work together to do joint purchasing, I guess, is what I'm thinking. I think there's clearly been a great rapport established between Mr. Winowski and Mr. LaRoche on an ongoing basis, and I feel like we we've got that happening, and I'm not sure we need to get into that. Yeah.
The process would be unnecessary.
I'm not sure we have a lot to gain. You know, we
Right.
could sit together and say, yeah, Ed and Mark talk, at least on a weekly basis, about this and that, and
Yeah.
there's initiatives to, you know, get all the paper from the same source, and yeah, we need to talk about, you know, what's the best way to buy oil? Do we do it at a, you know, at the rack rate, or do we,
Yeah.
you know, we've had great success in the school district with buying it
And frankly, it's operational personnel that will have to bring that to fruition. So it is best that Sue and I handle that with our counterparts in town and in the town government wing. And essentially, working together, I think will expedite some partnerships and some advantages. One, certainly the town could take advantage of piggybacking on some of our orders through SES. That's big-time buying power. And certainly we would want to see taxpayers benefit by the inclusion of the town in that big-time buying power. There are a lot of participants. So I think, frankly, it would be redundant. Let the people do what they need to do that work in operations.
Okay, thanks. Well, I have my answer on that.
Mm-hmm.
One of
but
the
before you go on, though, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm the chair, but I'm not. That was my thinking. I just want to make sure if there's others that think differently about that, that they have the opportunity to speak to it.
I'll just say, I think that, that there are plenty of things that these two boards can get together and meet about and discuss. I don't particularly think that's one of them. I think that's really something that Sue and Don and Mark and Ed need to do. But having said that, I definitely think that we need to, we should be meeting together sometime soon.
Could you give me a for instance on what you would think we should be discussing?
I think that one of the things that we talked about a little earlier, you know, field space, recreational space. Where are we? How can, you know, how can we, you know, is there anything we can do to combine efforts to move that along?
So I'm getting a feeling you're more interested in the physical requirements of the school right now, fields. Are you talking about facilities as well, or?
You know, I think,
Eventually.
yeah, and I think, I think that definitely. If the town, procuring land is something that, if that's something that the town is working hard to do, you know, maybe the two boards should be talking about things like that.
I agree on that, yeah.
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 Well, especially, you're right, through the acquisition of land.
Well, just
And
like Jill's
eventually,
comment
decision-
earlier about an access to, a
Right.
town-owned field. I mean,
Right.
maybe there's other places.
But ultimately, facilities construction, it can't be the school board's idea.
No, I understand.
It
Everybody
needs
has
to be, right, a town priority, a town initiative, in the broadest sense of the word town. We're all part of that town initiative.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think we should meet to discuss any issue, like what Linda has brought forward with field space, rec space, facilities construction, procuring land? Obviously, the combined efforts on purchasing are being taken care of. I don't know, energy. I think there's an energy committee, so I don't really know if that's really much of a big deal. Do you believe that it's worth having a meeting to discuss these topics?
I think if we're going to sit down in February and try to, hammer out a plan, after that would be a time where we would get our priorities in line with what their priorities are, so that we can accomplish those goals and make sure it's in line with what the town needs.
Okay, so maybe after the February kickoff of the facilities discussion again, would be a good time to maybe get together.
Mhm.
It may not be immediately after either. It may take a
Mhm.
while before you even
Yeah, 'cause you're
formulate
knee-
any kind of an idea.
Knee-deep in the budget process and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So,
But you're right.
somewhere in the future, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But we can't do this in a vacuum. These broad issues we cannot do in a vacuum. So there will be an appropriate time.
Okay, so sometime in the future, we may
Yes.
want to discuss.
Yes?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. One of the members of the council was driving by the school the other night and noticed some lighting on overnight. And once again, I made a comment, it's probably janitorial staff, but he believes the lights were on throughout the night. What is the policy for that? So I can.
Well, the policy
Let them
is we
know.
ask as facilities are cleaned, as you egress through the door, turn the lights off. Now, here's an example though, and we will pursue this, where you have the motion sensors in the room. And
We're guilty, we're supposed to be doing that
And
in
that's,
town
I mean,
hall
that
as
is
well, so.
basically a solution.
Well, we have an estimate coming for the elementary school to put those in.
Yes.
So we are going to look at
Yes.
that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, tell them not to hesitate to knock on the door, remind someone if they're in there. We'll turn the lights.
People are humans, I'm sure they sometimes
right.
forget to turn the switch off.
Right.
So that-
That wasn't during the whole ice storm, was it?
I have
Where
no
they were
idea
maybe
what
checking to make sure the
date
building
was.
was.
It was just a general question from
Yeah,
one of the
and it
councilors.
is, it's a legitimate concern. It is energy. We don't want to waste energy, and
I'm sure everybody's,
bring it to our attention. We don't resent it.
yeah, I'm sure the janitors know that.
Sure.
turn
They
the
are
lights
there
off.
until at least 11 o'clock at night,
Yeah,
so.
I realize.
Let 'em know.
It's potentially could be lights on until that time, so.
And I have just one question for my own edification, and it is, when you're determining who, let's say, works on all the heating systems in the schools, do you send out bids, or how do you determine who does the work for you?
Initially, we did do that. As far as heating systems go, though, because our boilers are so old and the history of them, we've tended to stay with the same person because they know the system and they know
That
how
makes
to.
sense, I
So
understand.
that's
They
why
understand
we.
your controls
Right,
systems
they
around
understand the
that,
controls. They.
That makes sense.
In the electrical department, over the years, we've had some difficulty finding people to do that. So we do actually use the company the town currently uses, I believe, for one building. But then on the other end, we use someone different for the elementary. And we've talked about that, collaborating and working together on that, and maybe actually Brian from the elementary school talked about, maybe we should get together with the town and all use the same electrician.
So maybe
all
there's
use the
another
same plumbing.
mutual discussion
Yes.
item. Okay, so
Yes.
contractual services.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Okay, well, that was it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Sean, I understand you might have some.
I just had a question that I was going to ask. Before I get to that, I thought maybe just to update my student report from last time, a couple of the events that I said that had to be canceled or rescheduled, just to note them, due to the ice storm. There was a charity basketball game that was supposed to take place last Saturday between Newmarket and Epping Town employees. Unfortunately, that was canceled. That's too bad. The student council put a lot of time into going around and finding donations from area businesses to raffle off gift certificates and products and whatnot. So that was a little disappointing, but it happens. Also, the junior class Christmas breakfast, which is an annual thing, was also canceled. That was last Saturday morning. I haven't heard rescheduled dates for either of those, so I would assume that those are canceled for the time being. And the holiday concert for the school music department was supposed to be last Thursday, which is when the ice storm itself was. That has been rescheduled to tomorrow night. That'll be at 7 o'clock tomorrow night in the high school gym. Aside from that, since my last report, there hasn't really been, everything's pretty much stayed the same. There hasn't been any new developments around the school. Pretty much everybody's just getting ready for the holidays and can't wait to get out of the school for Christmas, I guess. I just had a quick question. I've been in discussion over the last week with a couple of various students about basically student laptop access. If students who bring their laptops to school are allowed to access the internet, would that be something that I should bring to the school board, or would that be more of an issue to talk with Mr. Andriski or the school administration itself? I'm not really sure. It's a topic that many of the students I've talked with are interested about, so I wasn't sure if that should be brought up here or at the school level.
Well, I guess number one, we should, and it would be good to visit the laptop policy. You know, what do we have for a policy? But really, that should be handled at the individual building level at this point, and it may reach this venue. Certainly, I'm sure there's been discussion of issues, what's mounted on laptops, what's coming into the building. But, you know, I think Chris, your principal, Andriski, would be the proper starting point for that discussion.
Okay.
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, there's some value in students having laptops at school.
There is.
And there's certainly precedent in the state of Maine, for example, where there's...
Absolutely, where the state purchases laptops for all middle school students and has made the availability of laptops for others possible at a purchase price for a while of used computers, laptops at $140 per computer, and has provided, the state has provided a laptop for every teacher.
Can the students take the laptops home and back and forth between school and home?
Depends on the district, what the district policy is.
Many of them, they have to pay like a $50 insurance, much like
Right.
our teachers do,
Right.
in order to bring them home. And they
Yes.
can elect to do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more to come on that one.
Yeah, it's good, real good question.
Thank you. Mr. LaRoche, is there anything we haven't talked about that's on your superintendent's report?
There is our meeting with Oyster River.
Right.
We have talked about cooperation, collaborative, and tried to dispel rumors of pending merger with Oyster River. But we do see opportunities, similar to what we've been discussing tonight, that could save taxpayers money and could save effort and provide some insights that participants can provide for each district. So we met on the 10th of December with the superintendent from Oyster River, a couple of his principals, curriculum coordinator, special ed director, curriculum coordinator, as I mentioned. Sue was there for a portion of the meeting. Others from the office, our curriculum coordinator, special ed director, myself, our two principals. And there's quite a degree of excitement surrounding this opportunity. Here are some of the things we discussed. Where can we share? What are some partnerships? Well, one area would be in AP courses. Who is offering what AP course? Can we share that resource? We can't do all things in every district. There may be availability in Oyster River or availability here that doesn't exist in another district. There's fertile ground in special ed programming. There may be, for example, a faculty member who has a high degree of expertise in autism. If we have students who would benefit by that expertise, we may place and make use of instructional capacity there, or it may be here. Now, I know from experience that can save dollars, significant dollars, for districts. Professional development is another great opportunity. You bring a speaker in, let's share. Or if you have capacity within a district, expertise, why pay? Let's trade that back and forth. Summer programming. Not all districts, even when they want to, can find summer instructors, no less afford summer instructors. Technology, software, some co-curricular, extracurricular activities, opportunities. Something may be offered there, open to Newmarket students, something here, open to Oyster River. Alternative education, not a placement center for those that are simply resistant to opportunities offered in education, but a laboratory for best practice. Oftentimes, GT kids become disengaged because they're not challenged. Can we develop
GT, gifted and talented.
Gifted and talented. Right. Can we provide opportunities to engage those students? I know I had worked with a gifted and talented coordinator who was a high school dropout because of lack of engagement. Finally became engaged and secured his PhD in the area. But frankly, there was not a whole lot that challenged him in traditional delivery of academic programs. Extended year, we mentioned that, maybe in mathematics, where we know we have a need, and most districts have a need. How do we address that? Transition courses, transition services, grant writing. So our next step, we're meeting January 21st at Oyster River. Now, we had a meeting here, as I mentioned, and prior to the ice storm, and the lights went out that day. So I, tried to pass that off as a cost-sharing saving measure, but it didn't work. So we are looking forward. This is a wonderful opportunity. We've heard from some other districts that want to take advantage of engagement. Barrington, the board has asked the superintendent there to speak with me and eventually board member to board member about potential opportunities. I mentioned in Epping, there's been certainly some discussions. 6 superintendents, we had a meeting scheduled prior to this ice storm, are going to get together to discuss a base of participation and cooperation, a collaborative, similar to what I've told you I was involved with in Maine, that addresses programming and maybe some building needs. And then, this is exploratory, we haven't had the meeting yet, but to bring back potential recommendations to boards. So I'll be participating in those discussions. So a consortium is being formed. Mike Morgan from Exeter, myself, Barbara Epping, Henry Alberti, Jim Gaylord, Hampton, SAU 21. So I'm hoping that'll lead to some creative discussion. And yes, that is it for my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd just like to say I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've dealt with the 2009-10 school calendar already. Sue, can you speak to the 403B agreement?
Sure. I don't know if you're familiar with 403B plans and the whole tax consequences with them, but basically what they are is they're an advantage for municipal employees to participate in sheltering money, similar to 401ks, but they're specifically designed for municipal employees, school districts, towns. We've had them since I've worked for Newmarket, and it's always been set up as an employee's payroll deduction where we allow them to choose a vendor, select an amount, and we take it from their paycheck, and that's pretty much all our involvement was. Well, the IRS has gotten involved and decided that there are some tax implications with that, and that perhaps some employees are not understanding the laws and how much they can shelter, and so they place the burden of overseeing that on the employer, meaning the school district. There are provisions in a lot of those plans for hardship loans, lots of things that we, as a school district, I don't feel can handle on our own, me making those decisions whether or not someone is eligible for a hardship loan out of their 403B plan. So, as a result, one regulation that's come into play with the IRS is all school districts need to have a written plan. The deadline for that written plan was December 31st, 2008. And I, after going to several conferences, actually, when I was in Denver, I concentrated on that, had thought about writing that plan myself. Because we, as a district, do not provide for our employees for 403Bs. They just basically take their own money out of their own pay. We don't match any of that. So I thought it would be fairly simple. But after talking with a couple of consultants, I realized that I just really didn't want to take that on, and have contacted a company which most districts in New Hampshire are using called Gatekeeper. And they're basically a third-party administrator, and they would handle that for us. I met with them on December 8th, and they prepared this document for me, and I went through that, and I'm actually glad that I didn't do it myself, because this is the document that we have to have in place and comply with. I was going to ask you to sign that and talk about that, but December 11th, the IRS has changed their law and decided that we don't need to have that in place until December of next year, although we need to comply with all the rules and regulations that are set forth by that agreement. So we are going to move forward with that. I've asked Gatekeeper to be our third-party administrator, and I just want to inform you of that. Basically what that means is now when an individual signs up for a tax-sheltered annuity, it will go through them, and they will make the decision whether or not this particular vendor is compliant with all of the laws. All of their cost-sharing agreements are all in line with all of the laws. If we are audited by the IRS, they will sit down with the IRS and go over all of the agreements that we have and all the compliance issues that we have to certify that we, in fact, are following all the rules that we need to follow as far as 403B agreements. So probably in your first meeting in January, I'll bring to you the agreement, this agreement, once I get it back from Gatekeeper, and just have your signature on there to agree to move forward with our 403B plans in compliance with the IRS. That's kind of it in a nutshell. The law, I pulled it up today, that was set forth by the IRS, is 113 pages. So if you're interested in reading that, I can provide that to you at your next agenda. But that's,
Sean would like a copy.
yeah, that's how complicated it can be. So I'll bring that back to you at the next meeting, since I have a little more time to.
So is this an unfunded mandate from the IRS?
Yeah, well, sort of. There, again, we do have to pay a fee to Gatekeeper. It's around $700 to look over our plans and do some research on what we have. There will be some vendors that people are currently, we've already sent letters to those people, currently sending contributions to that are not eligible because they will not meet the compliance issues with the IRS. And that's for Gatekeeper to make that decision and notify them. We have 2 that we've notified, both of our employees, and they'll need to just switch who they send their monies to. And then there is a fee every month that we will pass on to either the vendor or the employee to monitor and maintain their plans. I think it's $3 a contribution, so the district won't have to pick up any of that. But we do have to pick up the cost for the plan itself.
Which is an annual $700.
No, it's not. It's a one-time fee.
Okay.
It's a one-time fee for looking over all of our plans, going through all of our vendors, and making sure our files are in place.
Get us in the
because-
right
everything's
starting point.
in the start, So I will be back to you at the next meeting with that agreement, and if you think of any other information you'd like on that item, let me know, and I'll put it with your agenda. I'll give you a little background information with that too, if you want to read it. Certainly not a whole 113 pages, but
Please, yeah.
in a nutshell.
Sean will summarize.
Does he pick on you like that?
Poor Sean. Any 503B questions? Sorry, 403. Thank you, Sue. That
Thank you.
nothing like taxes in the IRS. The intercom at the high school, we had some questions regarding were there things that we weren't quite aware of before going forward with that repair / replacement.
And Sue pursued that, and you did speak to the vendor, Sue?
I actually spoke with Chris, who spoke with the vendor,
Okay.
and he indicated, he had him come in one morning this week to go over that quote, and what was on that quote that was additional would be if we wanted more capabilities with the system within the classrooms, and that is not an unknown, as Forrest indicated. If, they set the system up and it will not work, that is not the case. Anything that, they've already investigated all of the rooms, and once they replace that box in the main office, everything will function, and it will be functioning far better than it currently is. But there are no issues in the classrooms at this time. It was just basically an upgrade that we could put, but it's not necessary to do that.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. Thompson said that they have the same company and the same system,
does.
and it functions quite well for
Yeah.
them. They've had it for about 3 years now.
3
so,
years.
yeah.
Did you need a signature on something on that?
We need a vote to move forward with that because it involves an expenditure
Right.
out of the surplus. We just wanted your approval to move forward with that before we actually order that system to replace it. I think that was,
That's right.
do you have that?
There it is.
Okay, so this is the quote from Williams Communication Services for the total cost of the system installed, tested and guaranteed for 1 year is an expense of $4,200. And again, was replacing a series of components in the office
Mhm.
area.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd entertain a motion, I guess, then, to proceed with the appropriation to repair this system.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a manifest?
I couldn't find the folder.
We do have a
We do have some
manifest.
manifests, but,
I know you signed the manifest.
yeah, and,
I don't think I took them with me today,
You did not. I don't think you
So-
did.
so stay
couldn't
tuned on the
find it.
manifest.
I know there
Okay.
are
No
some.
one's given me one, so.
Calendar. Been back and forth with that a few times tonight.
Yeah.
She had several she put in the folder.
So, no school on, starting on the 24th,
Right.
and proceeding through until school opens on the 5th of January.
Fifth, right.
There's a budget committee meeting on the 6th, I believe, which we will have all those pieces available for, thanks to our discussions tonight. And Sue's efforts pulling that together. Our next meeting is on the 8th. The public hearing is scheduled for the 14th at this point, and we'll need to post that at some point. On January the 17th, on Saturday, we're hoping to arrange a walk at the Durrell Woods area.
Yep.
At the school board meeting on the 22nd, we will, I guess, start that with a hearing and discussion about the concerns of abutters and other citizens regarding that
Are we
easement.
going to keep our 7 o'clock start time for that, or are we gonna move that start time?
What's your pleasure?
6.
Is it possible, I just think in terms of people's ability to be home from work if they're getting at 5 and being here, it's possible to structure our meeting, to have our meeting at 6 if we're gonna be here, and then plan for our public hearing at 7, and confine our business to the first hour.
Good
That
idea.
way people have sufficient time to get home and be
Right.
present if they so choose.
Right, that was my concern, is that if we held it at 6, if the abutters, et cetera,
Exactly.
weren't available at
Public
that
hearing
hour.
at 6, people might be able
Yeah.
to get here.
Yeah.
7, we can do our business at 6.
Right.
I like that idea, thank you. Okay, that's,
I just have a quick question. You said that the budget public hearing on the 14th, we had to post that? Is it that a budget committee meeting, or is that our
Oh,
meeting?
that's a good question. That,
No, that date's just the final date, and actually that's a little confusing. That's the final date for petition warrant articles.
Yeah, but the 14th is the budget committee public
Right.
hearing.
And if you noticed on the calendar that I just gave you, Cliff, I revised that. We'll be posting that hearing on the 7th.
okay.
That's the actual posting. The last date to post it would be the 14th.
And we post it for the budget
We
committee.
post that. We post that meeting,
Okay.
yes. And
So we
we
don't
will
have a
post that
set
notice.
date for that yet, then?
For the
Yeah, the
Budget
meeting.
committee's public hearing?
14th. Isn't the 14th on the,
Yes.
Yes.
And we do post it, okay.
and we'll be posting that on the 7th.
7.
And that has to be posted before the 13th, et cetera.
Mhm.
We don't need to discuss
Okay.
posting rules. And I trust the charity basketball game will be rescheduled. I've heard rumors that the breakfast, the junior breakfast, they're talking about doing that sometime in those late winter, cold days. I don't know, Groundhog Day or something, who knows? So stay tuned for that.
And keep the fingers crossed for tomorrow for the music
Yeah.
program, because there's another snowstorm coming
I
through.
didn't even think about that.
Mr. Andruski said what he may do, if that in fact happens, he may have it taped, have it during class on Tuesday, and then broadcast it on Channel
Oh.
13. Last night's concert for the elementary school was taped, and Mrs. Boatwright was able to do that, and if anyone's interested in watching that, I believe tomorrow at 6, that will be on. It's about 35 minutes.
In preparation for this meeting, I think I saw it on the
I think
TV over there.
that's true. They
Good.
did start it tonight, but
So-
tomorrow night at 6, it will be on, so if you're
Excellent.
interested in watching that. And if you want to find out other times that it's on, you can go to the elementary website under programs, and under music, you will see it's listed as to the times that it may be shown, if anyone's interested, can attend.
Very good.
So,
Sean, do you know what the final dates for donations for the food baskets are? Does that wrap up this week?
I
think it's the
think the last,
19th.
I'm pretty sure the last day is tomorrow.
Right.
Because there was a
Okay.
big push today.
Saturdays and the preparing and.
Yeah, I think it's this weekend,
Okay.
it's the preparation
All
weekend.
right.
Yeah.
So, food and monetary donations can be dropped off. Tomorrow's the last day. I'm sure that the high school office would be very happy to accept any
Absolutely.
donations from anyone from town that may want to stop by tomorrow and help out some of our neighbors in need. Also, have you heard, is there going to be a basketball tournament over Christmas vacation? Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything or seen any ads I've heard around the school. I'm pretty sure they had one last year. I can inquire about that. But I personally haven't heard anything.
Any other calendar items?
Just, if I just make a comment here as we, I think, prepare to close. I just want to take a moment and thank our town employees who I know spent days and days out in our, between the ice storm and the recovery and the cleanup and keeping water pumps running and moving generators around and all of those kinds of things. Just, thank them and wish the best to everybody that lived through days and may still be living without power. We hope that you
Me.
find this holiday to be enjoyable and
Just got back
everything's ready
last
for
night.
you by then.
Indeed.
You're here.
Thank you
Tough
for
6
for
days.
pointing that out. Okay, unless there's any other business, we do have reason to go into non-public session to discuss personnel matters briefly under RSA 91A:3 2C. I would entertain a motion for this.
Make a motion, move into non-public session.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.